There's a dynasty brewing in South Florida, but all of the NHL fantasy hockey takes that you need to know will be broken down on the latest episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Let's get this paper.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
There is never a moment you want to miss to get a leg up on the competition in the NHL fantasy hockey game. That's why you're tapped right back into the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Shout out to the Everydayers Steel, holding us down, making us their first listen every single day. It's free agency, baby, and we have a whole bunch of teams to cover, including the Masterclass, Bill Zito. Oh my goodness, Steel. This Eastern Conference is in for a whole world of hurt, but fantasy fallout to be had. Let's talk about Mitch Marner, the Toronto Maple Leafs, and of course, the Boston Bruins. There is a lot to get to. If I have to be clear, Steel, I'm a little bit upset. This Florida Panthers team is far too good. And look, how are they not going to run back at least close to the same product on the ice? Hit me with your take. Credit due to the front office, Bill Zito, all of that. But my goodness me, a little bit rattling if you're a fan of any team other than the Florida Panthers in the East right now.
Oh, man. Bill Zito is the GM of the decade. He is an absolute masterclass at his job right now. And I got to compare them to the Kansas City Chiefs because what they are doing right now, they are completely a true dynasty for the next couple of years. And
right?
The fact that they have 10 guys locked up for the next 5-6 years until 2030, 2031, Barkov, Kachuk, Reinhart, Bennett, Verhaeghe, Marchand, Lundell, Jones, Ekblad, Forsling, all at really, really good contracts as well for what they bring value-wise to the table. It's incredible. Right. So, you know, as much as we are going to be in a lot of trouble as a Toronto Maple Leaf fans and in this Eastern Conference, claps for Bill Zito, hands up for him because he did a wonderful job. And just to ream off the actual contracts, and I'll throw it back over to you, Sam Bennett, 8x8 for $64 million over that span. Aaron Ekblad, 8x6.1 for a total of $48.8 million, as well as Brad Marchand staying in Florida for 6x5.25 for a total of $31.5 million. We didn't think that he was capable of doing it, but he got all three guys that just won the Stanley Cup locked up with the rest of the guys I just mentioned. It's a masterclass. And fantasy value-wise, look, this team is an absolute juggernaut, an absolute gold mine. Yes. We've talked so much about what Forsling brings to the table. We talked about so much as well as what Luster-Rain and Anton Lundell. But Bennett, Marchand, and Ekblad, it's incredible.
When you look at the balance that this team is going to be able to run back, we have to take a quick pause, Steele, and I think recognize how good they will return to be. Sometimes in the postseason, you and I have covered it. We don't want to get too fired up of what a team was able to do in a short sample size. It's not that with the Florida Panthers. This is a team you want a piece of any way that you can slice it. I looked at the special teams. For the power play, they sit right at the 13th mark in the NHL. Penalty kill, right around the same. That's only going to get better, in my opinion. They bring in Tarasov to back up Bobrovsky. There's some moves that I think will tinker this roster. But what I want to get at is get after this roster. You want it. Sam Bennett, big-time contract extension. When you look at also what they're able to do in terms of being a very responsible defensive club, that means fantasy value across the board. Carter Verhaeghe on the blue line, Ekblad back, re-upped. I don't know what your take is on the rest of the Eastern Conference, Steel. I don't see another team coming in between this Florida Panthers club and the top spot once again, and I just see quality options across the board. So Eastern Conference, step up, tune up, and better tap in, or else the Panthers are running through you once again.
Look, they are far above and beyond the rest of the Eastern Conference right now. I really don't think anyone in either of the divisions can even live up to them. And I still like what Toronto has done. Obviously, losing Mitch Marner, which we'll talk about shortly, is going to hurt, but there's still a lot of skill set up front, and on the blue line's a lot better. The goaltending, we love Wall and Stolars as the duo, as the tandem there. But when you look at Tampa Bay, when you look at Carolina even, New York Rangers, Washington Capitals, they're just not a good matchup for this Florida team. They're coached by one of the best coaches in the game, Paul Maurice. Bobrovsky hasn't lost a step since he got to Florida. He's actually gotten better as time's gone on. And again, the fact that they have all 10 of those guys locked up till 2031, 2032, they're going to be running this division, the conference, and the league for the next 5 to 6 years. This is a dynasty. They are a gold mine of a team. To me, the one that really solidified this, the contract that stuck out to me out of all three of those guys, was Aaron Ekblad. I think the fact of him taking the $6.1 million AAV, a little bit of a, again, hometown discount. I know he's not from Florida, but it is a hometown home team discount there. Sure. It paved the way. It paved the way for them to be able to do this and maneuver their cap space to being able to sign all three of those guys. So shout out again to Bill Zito for getting it done. Aaron Ekblad, to me, alongside Seth Jones, those are going to be interesting fantasy pieces on the blue line that we're going to have to talk about a little bit more in depth. But Sam Bennett, again, the season he had fantasy-wise was almost second to none. I mean, his fantasy value jumped tremendously from 123, finishing 35th in Yahoo fantasy rankings. He's most likely not going to be there, but for you and I who are always involved in banger leagues, categorical leagues, this guy does it all. 51 points, over 100 penalty minutes, over 150 hits, power play time as well, special teams time. So Sam Bennett is going to be a crucial factor once again. The way he plays the game really affects everybody on the team. And it's not just him. You know, Kachuk has that dog in him as well. Reinhardt has that snarl. So much of these guys, they just buy into the culture. So again, Aaron Ekblad was the unsung hero in this situation for the deal, because he could have got $9 million on the market. Bennett could have got more as well, but masterclass by Bill Zito.
Eastern Conference, we just mentioned on yesterday's episode how close we expect this to be now that the Florida Panthers have basically said we're going to run back the same roster. Perhaps we need to pay more attention what these other teams will do over the next couple of days. Steele, more moves to be had, a lot more fantasy angles to be broken down. Toronto Maple Leafs, Mitch Marner, hey, we've spoken about it, but it warrants attention. Boston Bruins as well. We're here the rest of the week. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Monarch Money. Ever wish you could monitor your money a little easier? With Monarch Money, you can. Growing your savings, planning a big purchase, Monarch Money puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your personal CFO right there with full visibility over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. Track all your accounts, build investments, and monitor your spending all in one place. Make sure you take control of your finances today with Monarch Money. Right now at Monarch Money, use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com, 50% off your first year. monarchmoney.com. Use code NHL locked on for half off your first year. Make sure you tap in today.
And thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button. Leave a 5-star review for your boys here, Flip Livingstone and Steele Roden. We are playing catch up this week. We took a little bit of a hiatus in the last week of June, but we're getting into it. We're ramping back up for July and August, bringing you all the fantasy hockey news you need to win your championship this year. And look, we knew the rumors were going around. We knew it was a possibility. Official, Mitch Marner has been traded to the Vegas Golden Knights, 1-for-1 deal for Nick Roy. So we get back a third line grinder, a guy who has produced a little bit as well. He had 15 goals, 31 points in 71 games, has the physical aspect that the Leafs need in the bottom six as well.
I think so.
Deal, Marner gets 8 years by 12 million, 96 million total, whatever it was. What are your initial thoughts on the deal? How are you feeling about, seeing Mitch Marner now in a Vegas uniform?
8-year, $96 million deal, AAV of $12 million. Here's my take, Steele. I would not be surprised with the addition of Mitch Marner that this Vegas team gets the wrinkle offensively that they've been kind of looking for. And I don't mean that translate immediately to a Stanley Cup or anything like that. I'm a little bit rattled because everyone in Leafs Nation expects, this needed to happen. This was the right move, all of that. That might be true. How do we replace, as a Toronto Maple Leafs fan base, 102 points? And if I'm keeping it tight to fantasy value as well, sure, I like it. This is a good team. Very defensively balanced, but are they not a little bit less potent offensively than the Toronto Maple Leafs? How do you buy in immediately to Mitch Marner at the same triple-digit level when we don't know where he's going to play? Attached to Jack Eichel? Yeah, I see it right away. But if they have to balance it out and he plays on the second line, maybe with Thomas Hertl, or who knows what that looks like, I don't know. Maybe I'm a little bit in the minority. I don't want to just say he goes to Vegas and is able to do even more. 103 points or 2 in the NHL, that's a real big deal.
I'm on the opposite side of the fence over here. I'm telling you, I'm drafting them with my first 2 picks in the upcoming draft. Jack Eichel and Mitch Marner will be on my fantasy hockey team. I'm buying into this. You know how much I love Jack Eichel and what he brings to the hockey world, what he brings fantasy hockey-wise. He had 96 points this last year. Sorry, 94 points this last year, a career high for Jack Eichel. And now he's getting a playmaker, a wizard on the power play, and Mitch Marner on his right wing side. He's going to be playing with Jack Eichel. There's no doubt in my mind about it. He's not playing with Thomas Hertl on the second line. He's not playing with Barbashev and Hertl. He'll be playing with Eichel and Dorofeyev on that top line, first power play unit. Again, penalty kill unit as well. He's going to be used like he was in Toronto, and I'm buying into it. I am pissed. I am mad that he will be in a Vegas uniform, and to me, he's most likely going to be the most hated ex-Leaf player that has ever stepped back into Scotiabank Arena. Look, we're pissed. He sent out a heartfelt message, talking about his time in Toronto, what the fans mean to him, the organization, being a hometown kid. It doesn't matter. Why didn't you talk like that for the last 4 or 5 years? Why are you always going to the media complaining about, my contract, blaming other people? Look, he will be hated. He will be missed, but he will be hated in Toronto. But even regardless of that, I'm going to take the bias out of it. I'm buying into fantasy hockey. He will be on my team. So will Jack Eichel. I'm running that duo on my fantasy hockey team to win back-to-back championships here. On the flip side of thing, unintended, we get Nick Roy. We also made a trade with Utah for Matthias Maselli. We're still learning how to pronounce the last name.
We're trying.
What do you think about the return of those 2 guys? Again, for Nick Roy from Vegas and then getting Maselli from the Utah Mammoth.
I think the Mammoth angle with Michelli is a little bit of a high kind of, there's a ceiling there for offensive potential. He wore out his welcome a little bit with the coaching staff in Utah. I like what they were able to do in terms of salvaging some kind of, that player we got back from Vegas, Nick Waugh, is going to fit right in on the third line. I can't get away from talking about Mitch, though, Steele. I'm with you, man. Like, it's obviously a polarizing topic. I don't know if I'm ready to immediately say so over-under on points for Mitch. 101. You're saying over with confidence?
No, under.
Okay. So here's what I'm getting at. Yes.
He could go over 100 points, but I'm not sure what's holding you back right here. He has a superstar player goal scorer in Jack Eichel as well, and this team is a very good offensive team And I know Dorofeyev, again, 1 year, really good season.
Right.
But these are some really skilled guys he's still playing with. These are no scrubs out here.
I guess what I'm just saying is we've seen it around the NHL before for a player that has never been in another market. You can't just immediately expect it. Could I be wrong? For sure. Let me hit you with this. Vegas Golden Knights last season steal. This is going to back you up. 274 goals for. That was third most in the NHL. So, yes, the upside is there. I guess with so much uncertainty when players shuffle cities, I want to see a little bit of where he's playing, who he's playing with. At the end of the day, no one's talking about what this will do for the Toronto Maple Leafs fantasy pieces. Tavares back. Nye's back, of course. Willie, Austin Matthews. Before we head on to a couple of other topics, what do you think this might mean for pieces in Toronto? Because replicating that many points isn't as easy as we all think, I would say.
No, it's not. And again, like I'm going to buy into Mitch Marner, but what this means for Toronto's fantasy value-wise, again, it all depends on how healthy Austin Matthews is. And again, and I'm hoping he will be 100% healthy at the beginning of the season.
Good point.
But I think when you look at a guy like William Nylander, in the last 3 years, he has had 87 points, 98 points, 84 points, has missed only one game in the last 4 seasons. I think his value goes up dramatically. I think a guy like Matthew Knies, we just talked about him, he has the potential of putting up 75 points while also bringing over 150 hits, 200 plus shots, a couple of penalty minutes on top of that as well, a 30 plus goal score potential. That just brings more value to those guys. And to go back to Matias Maccelli, I think there's a good opportunity for him to really stand out as well in the top 6. He could potentially be playing with Tavares and Nylander or Matthews and Domi on the first line. Okay. He will be a top 6 player. I mean, there could be some times where they shuffle. Maybe Bobby McMahon gets in there at times. Again, Matthew Knies will be in there for sure. But I think a guy like him who has more of the playmaking ability, which I'm not going to compare him to Mitch Marner, but he's more of a passer. He has the vision in the offensive zone. He's a player that I'm going to keep my eyes out for towards the end of the draft. I'm not saying he's going to be a draftable guy, but if he's playing in the top 6, you can see how the potential will start to rise and playing with the guys in Toronto.
Tree living, shuffling the deck, that's needed. Let's talk about a couple more players on the Boston Bruins and a whole bunch more news, Steele, to shake out over the next couple of days and a whole bunch of fantasy fallout to be had. We'll also continue to break down the top 5 fantasy targets on every single squad the rest of the week. Let's get after it.
Boston Bruins, they re-up with Morgan Geekie. They also sign Tanner Jeannot and trade for Victor Arvidsson. We're going to talk about that after the break. Very intriguing moves from Don Sweeney and the Boston Bruins. Once again, thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Continue to smash that subscribe button, the follow button, leave a 5-star review. We appreciate you. We love you out there. Thank you so much for holding us down throughout the summer season. Boston Bruins, again, we've talked a lot about actually the Atlantic and even just the Canadian teams in our last episode. Claude Giroux stays in Ottawa. Vancouver gets Evander Kane. Montreal for Noah Dobson as well. Boston, I mean, I'm sitting here just kicking my feet up. I'm laughing. I'm having a great time with what's going on because it doesn't make sense to me. No. You're telling me you couldn't pay Brad Marchand $7.5-8 million, but you're gonna go out there and spend $7.5 on Tanner Jeannot and Victor Arvidsson? Right. Like, what are we doing out here? Exactly. What are we doing out here, Boston? But hey, I love it. You're gonna be at the bottom of the barrel. I'm really looking forward to seeing you guys play this year. But Morgan Geekie is probably the hot topic here. I know you talked about him. You like him a lot throughout the last year. 5.5 AAV. through 6 years, so $33 million overall. How are you feeling about that contract?
Not every single situation that breaks down in NHL news means fantasy value. I like the deal for Morgan Geekie, but look up the middle for this Boston Bruins club. Lindholm, Middlestat, Fraser Minton, Sean Corrali. Be very wary of what you're doing with the Boston Bruins pick steal. Hey, they bring in Mason Lowry, good contract. We still see a lot of value in Jeremy Swayman. Tap into their offensive stats from last year. 222 goals scored, Steele. Only the Flames, Ducks, Preds, and Sharks scored more. Don't get too tapped into what the Bruins are going to do up front. So moves are being made here. And you're right. You're like, Flip, why do we even really want to talk about the Bruins? 2 reasons. 1, I don't think they're going to have a good season. So we love talking about that. Seal, boom, bap. Number 2, as a fantasy GM, be careful of what you're doing because as Steele just alluded to, Jeannot, Arvidsson, and I know bringing back Brad Marchand wasn't just a shoo-in. There's not a whole lot of things that have made sense for this Bruins roster over the last now year or so, Steele. This is more of the be careful, be wary. Morgan Geekie, sure. Stream, week to week, waiver wire perhaps. Deep formats, okay. Otherwise, I don't know what's going on in Boston.
No, Morgan Geekie is a draftable player.
Oh,
he's a draftable player. He is a draftable player. He's playing with David. He's playing with David Pastrnak on the top line, regardless of how bad the rest of his team is. David Pastrnak has put up 100+ points in the last 3 seasons, while also not missing a single game. So while you look at what the Boston Bruins, when you look at their team from last year, and how they all finished, David Pastrnak was, again, above and beyond the rest of the team. He had 106 points. The next guy in line was Morgan Geekie with 57 points. Like, that is a huge difference. That's almost 50% more than the second guy right there.
And so value to be had still.
Lots of value to be had. I still think Morgan Geekie, you should be able to draft him in the 13th, 14th round. I wouldn't be reaching more than that. Again, this team, I don't think, like Flip and I agree with on here. We don't think the Boston Bruins are going to be great. They're going to have a pretty bad season. Again, maybe Jeremy Swayman has a bounce back year as well, but Morgan Geekie is still a draftable player. Get him somewhere in the 13th, 14th, 15th round. I wouldn't even mind the 12th. He did finish in the Yahoo rankings. He did finish 163. So that would put him in between the 10th and 11th round. I would still maybe wait a couple more, maybe the 13th and 14th, but a guy who is now 2 years in a row, 110 plus hits, 150 shots, a career year, 57 points. I think the Boston Bruins are buying into this kid. I'm not going to buy into him as much as they are, but I think somewhere in the mid to late rounds of your draft, Morgan Geekie is a viable option.
This is why I appreciate doing it with you, pal. I need you to rein me in. Man's been out in the sun for a few days. Too many hours
July
on
1st. Hey, it's Canada Day.
Highway 400 has been cooking your boy. The Bruins, nothing to cover up from. 8th spot in the Atlantic Division last year. 76 points. Minus 50 on a goal differential. All of those translate into be wary with what you're doing. With these Bruins pieces, hey, let's bounce back, though, baby. Steele. Lots more news to cover the rest of the week.
Hey, it's free agent frenzy. There's still a lot of deals to be had. Real quickly, I have to give a shout out to a real one out there. Bob McKenzie retiring from TSN.
Hey.
Grew up watching him throughout my entire life on TSN, Top 10 Sports Center, covering the World Juniors after 48 illustrious career in the sports industry. He's finally fully retiring. So I had to give a shout out to him.
Love it.
He's honestly one of my favorite guys to watch growing up, and obviously going to be missed. He's still going to be a part of our lives in the hockey community, but had to give a shout out to a real one out there. Happy retirement. Congratulations. Love you, Bob McKenzie.
Thank you for doing that, Steele. Look, Bob McKenzie has been a pillar of the hockey community. That's 25 years plus at TSN. I like that his son is going to still take up the mantle. Shout out to a real one, you and Bob.
Hey, thank you so much. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. For your second listen, though, make sure you go check out the Locked On NHL Podcast, because there is no offseason. We're bringing you the daily league-wide stories that matter most with local coverage from the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Find Locked On NHL on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Once again, from Flip and I, we wish you good luck with those summer bets, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.